The world's fourth biggest automaker is set to be created in a $50 billion merger between Peugeot owner PSA Group and Fiat Chrysler. Now, the two companies have reached a binding agreement that will give each a 50% share in the new venture, and it comes just 6 weeks after the deal was first announced, and it is expected to be completed within 15 months. Cost cutting is going to be a key focus, with a target of slashing costs by $4 billion without shutting any factories. Now, they've also pledged to invest more in auto-driving systems and electric vehicles. And also in play is a 12% stake held by China's Dongfeng Motor Group. Now, under the deal, they'll sell off nearly 31 million shares and trim their ownership to 4.5% of the new group. The union is going to undoubtedly shake up the global car industry. They're Europe's second and third biggest car makers, after all. They sold a total of 8.8 million cars last year. But the tie-up, it could drive that up to a potential 14 million vehicles every year. Now, in another auto deal, Japan's Isuzu Motors is going to buy Volvo's subsidiary UD Trucks. Now, in this $2.3 billion deal, Isuzu is going to tie up with the Swedish automaker to tap into the realm of new innovations, including electric as well as self-driving tech. Now, with this tie-up, Volvo is hoping to compete better with rivals such as Germany's Daimler, as well as India's Tata Motors and China's Dongfeng Motor. Now, for Isuzu, a maker of small and mid-sized diesel trucks, it would help achieve the goal of developing its own electric vehicles. Volvo, meantime, which has already begun marketing battery electric trucks, said that the transaction will add to its operating income by about $208 million. Volvo is the world's fifth largest truck-making group in brands, including Volvo Trucks, Japan's UD Trucks, France's Renault Trucks, and US-based Mack Trucks. Isuzu shares jumping 3% on the back of that news before closing with 1.5% in gains in Tokyo today. Meantime, Volvo's shares also trading positively this hour in Europe. For more, let's bring in Jasper Lawler. He's head of research at the London Capital Group. He's going to talk to us about this story. Jasper, thanks for being with me this evening. Let's break down each deal. Walk us through how the Fiat Chrysler merger is going to impact both companies.
Hi, Dawn. What a pleasure to be with you. Well, first, worth mentioning it's going to be a 50-50 split. So the CEO of Peugeot is going to become the CEO of this new group. We don't know the name of the new group yet, and the CEO of Fiat will become the chairman. But the idea is that the power is pretty split evenly, pretty well across the group. The new headquarters will be in the Netherlands, but the shares will be listed on the respective exchanges where these companies traditionally come from, so Italy, France, and the US because of Chrysler. And the share is worth noting that the share prices are all higher today. That's obviously good news for investors, and I think it sort of speaks to the general interpretation here that this is good for both companies. It's a merger of equals. Neither the shareholder base necessarily has to lose out, but they gain the scale that's needed at the moment when, obviously, as you said in your introduction, massive R&D costs are amounting for the industry as they transition to EV and new regulations according to that. And it's a time when global demand is coming down, so they really need to expand R&D but cut costs. And so mergers are one way to do it, and there's no real one winner, one loser from this. Actually, both companies stand to benefit from the scale they're going to generate here.
Jasper, let's talk about the tie-up between Isuzu and Volvo now. A rather different but strategic alliance there, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's not obviously a merger. The two companies are going to remain separate. There has been a transaction, relatively small, obviously, in comparison to the deal. It's just selling Isuzu the trucks business from Volvo in Japan, so almost a way to bring the two companies together through a transaction. It's not transformative for either one, but from Volvo's standpoint, it allows them to get rid of a fairly low-margin trucking business in Japan. The competition there is very strong, and so gives them some cash, again, to reinvest into this transition to EVs, and at the same time save costs because they are, through this new partnership, between the two companies, they're again going to be able to pool their resources, and by doing so, cut costs in the process and hopefully come up with some competitive products. But the feeling is that at the end result of this is that both companies are going to be up there competing in this new marketplace, but they are going to be separate companies. And at some point, presumably, given that they are pretty strong competitors, particularly in the trucking, heavy load vehicle market, that they are going to part ways at some point once we get through this juncture that the auto industry is in at the moment between, Dieselgate, transition away from diesel down to low emissions to electric vehicles and eventually autonomous driving.
So, Jasper, we've seen a growing trend of mergers in the industry, in the auto industry. What impact do you think it's going to have on consumers?
Well, one side impact potentially is that in these deals we've talked about, one of the conditions of the French government, who are big owners of Peugeot, being involved, is there aren't going to be layoffs. So you're not going to have that immediate hit to consumption more broadly, because supposedly there won't be factory closures. Rather, there probably will be some layoffs at those factories. But more broadly, there is a risk that this is part of an ongoing trend of consolidation in the industry, and that there's just going to be fewer and fewer players and larger companies that have more monopolistic control over the industry. And so as a consumer, you're going to have less choice potentially, and so there's a risk that eventually in a few years down the pipe, when there's fewer car companies out there, you're going to have less choice of cars, and you're probably going to be paying more for that lack of choice. The upside, obviously, is that we're going to get through this uncertainty period for consumers at the moment. If you think about why demand for new vehicles has dropped so much over the last few years, it's because it's not clear where the regulation's going in terms of how diesel cars will be treated, what the tax implications will be, and it's just not convenient to have electronic vehicles. So the sooner we can get past that gap for consumers, that will be a benefit to all.
All right, thank you very much, Jasper, for those insights. I've been speaking there to Jasper Lawler of the London Capital Group.